Welcome to Impact Podcast. My name is Jeremy Melton, and I'm your host along with Daniel and Maddie. For the next 30 minutes to an hour, or however long you choose to tune in, on this show, we're going to uncover some things that will help you on your journey to make an impact on the world that we live in. Our highlight question is, what kind of impact are you making on the world that we live in? And remember, our goal on this show is to generate the desire to understand it sooner rather than later. This is episode number 4. And last week, in episode number 3, we talked about leadership mandates. We're going to go through those together. So how about we just get started? Number 6, determination. Determination is important because the cards will fall out of favor from time to time. And your determination, and there's some resolve. We're going to talk about that in a minute too. Like you said, they go hand in hand. But the leader will fail in some capacity on a regular basis. The leader will. It's just the way it works. And if you're not failing, then you're not maximizing your potential, right? If you're not failing, then you're not doing something right. Mm-hmm. You need to get to doing some more difficult things because you want to fail. Failure is where you learn. And years ago, I read a book on failure, and man, how important failure is as a person, as a leader, but even as a human being. It's very important to fail at something. And so the whole world has raised us, no, don't fail. Well, dude, you're not ever going to grow. That's how you grow, right? Mm-hmm. And so can y'all ever think of a time where you had to be determined? Your determination level went up and you overcame something. I think we talked about that the first week too. But if you have a quick story where you had to be determined to get it done.
I mean, I just jump into being determined, but failures. And I just had a project just this week. And, it was a client that I really wanted to knock it out of the park. And she said, I want this, and was very clear. This is what I want. And I said, I got you. Was it above my capacity and my abilities? A little bit, but I pushed myself, and I was like, we went hard, and I spent way more hours than I should have on the project. Mm-hmm. Was it perfect? No. Was she happy? Well, to be determined.
Yeah.
But that didn't matter. I said, yes, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I put it together, and I pushed my own abilities. And even if it's not that project, the next project's going to benefit from that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I fail every single day. Every single day.
Me too.
It's all good. And I just think it's important, just like, yes, we're failing every day, but how do you handle failure?
You have to fail, and you have to get back up. And if you're not failing, it's like, man, let's try something else. Let's do something that makes it hard. Number 7 is humility. We talked about that last week. We beat it in the ground. But I'm going to read this that I wrote. So one of the most dynamic leadership lessons that I ever learned, I actually I taught myself. I read the book of Nehemiah. And, it's in the Bible, of course. But I did years ago, I did a Bible study with my pastor at the time. This was back in 2015, May of 2015, I believe is when it was. But we did a leadership study on the book of Nehemiah, and then later on, I went back and read the book, and I went through and picked out all these different things. We're actually going to do that study on here one day. But Nehemiah did not regard himself higher than those that were with him. And so he was the governor, and he stayed with the people. But it was early on in my career and my development as a leader where I learned what Nehemiah did. And a lot of y'all might be thinking, well, I don't even know what Nehemiah did. But he rebuilt the wall, okay, in the Bible. And I'm not going to get into that deep today because we're going to do it later. But essentially, the lesson that was taught was he was never better than his people, never higher than his people. And in fact, he devoted a whole chapter, I believe it was a whole chapter, to talking about what his people had done, and that he had, he basically committed he wrote the book, but he committed a whole chapter to say this guy did this person did this person did this person did this. Very cool. But again, we talked about humility, and that's what that is. Part of that is that humility, and so humility is critical for a leader. It's not always present, like we talked about, but it's critical. And then, of course, basically don't get caught up in the worldly rankings and seek to be equal with others. Seek to put everyone else above you. That's humility, right? Everyone else has to be better or more important than you. And so cultivate humility constantly. Now, I don't want to beat a dead horse because we talked about it a lot last week, but do y'all have anything on that?
This one's a hard one for me. I've thought about it too. Earlier today, you said that you've thought about the 3 H's. And I really have too. I think that the other two, hungry, but the humble and humility, it's really hard for me to kind of grasp that in my everyday life. We've done a lot of these episodes, and that's just the one thing that really is like stuck out to me that I feel like I fail at.
Yep. Hey, that's good.
I mean,
I was going to say it. Me too.
Yeah, it's just
break the ice.
Yeah, I don't know.
I fail at it every day.
It's hard.
Well, in everything we talk about how like do these things, be intentional, but humble's something that it's difficult to be intentional about, because if you're being intentional about being humble, then
Might be pride.
yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah.
It's just tricky, and maybe it's just, I don't know. How is it created? How do we really latch onto it?
The other day I sent y'all the thing that Pink had said. Did y'all watch that?
I'd seen it before.
She talks about Chris Stapleton and says he's the most humble guy in the room. Dude, that's what I want people to say about me.
Right.
But they're not, because I'm not. Look, I mean, let's just be real.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to balance it because you want to be humble, but then you feel like you need to be confident. But there's such a line there. And at the end of the day, when I hear someone is the most humble guy in the room, it's like, man, that's an aspiration. All right. And so you think, well, like you said, Daniel, how do you do that? How do we find that? Well, you got to seek it. You got to be intentional about it. But man, just make it. It ain't about you,
Right.
It's not about you.
It's just really going back to the human nature thing too, because it's just very easy to just. I think of putting everyone before myself. Of course, I'm like, well, of course I put my kids. That's the easy stuff. It's the lady at the checkout when you're, you're being intentional by asking these, how's your day today? Or, stuff like that. But do you really and truly feel, are you really putting that person first? Like, is that person really and truly above you? Or are you just trying to make conversation? I don't know. So I've really thought about this one a lot.
It's good.
And we don't have to keep beating the dead horse.
Number 8. Oh, we'll keep talking about it.
I can't wait for that episode.
Yeah. Number 8 is courage. Courage is the big one for us all to embrace. Courage is strength. Undefined, because, and that's what I put here, but, courage is necessary to lead. Without it, you're not leading. People will not see your willingness to fight, and you must be willing to fight for your people. And I put fight for right. Again, that courage, is what makes people initially start following you.
Yeah.
When you exhibit courage, and by the way, people want a leader. They do. They starve for it. I think it's in our nature. We talked about our nature. God made it. He put it in us that we want a leader. And they might say, I don't want nobody. But deep down, everybody wants a leader. At least, even the strongest leaders in the room want a leader. They need it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, then the ultimate leader is Jesus, of course, but everybody needs a leader. And courage is critical and imperative to the leader's influence. Number 9, recognition of others.
Can I say something really?
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Courage goes back to your story. I can't remember which number it was about the friend he wasn't involved in the thing at all, but he was like,
Tyler.
It was
Tyler's
me.
story.
Oh, yeah.
and he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, it was me, and you were like, I'm very proud of you. That took courage as well. Like that right there is like, you're taking the blame for everybody. I mean, how scary could that have been?
Well, I mean, he could lose his job.
Right.
Or whatever. But you know what? It didn't matter to him. What mattered to him was his people.
Right.
And that's what, when I say that's the kind of, those leaders will lead some people.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys that are willing to do that are dynamic, great leaders.
Yeah.
And yes, he had courage.
And courage is scary. I mean, I think that's a huge thing is you can be courageous and you can, in everything that you do, but then there's a lot of things that are very scary for people like that
Oh, yeah.
situation. It's like they had the courage to get through it when no one else did. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. Sorry.
Oh, it's good.
Good.
All right, so recognition of others, and y'all, and this is going to kind of go back. That's important. You got to recognize others, not yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about that, and I told in Nehemiah chapter 3. Actually, it was chapter 3 where he spent the whole chapter talking about how those people, what they did, and so, but that's super important.
Yep.
Number 10 is vision. A great leader must have vision, or said in another way, direction. Right, so. You got to know which way the boat is going. And the leaders must have a direction for others to follow. He or she must be able to share that vision and give direction to whomever may be following. And not when asked, but the leader ought to regularly be casting vision.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, if you want to keep a team together, then you got to talk about where you're going. And you got to constantly echo that over and over and over again. I have been in situations where the leader that I'm under is not casting vision. And whenever that's happening, in 20 years it's happened, right? Whenever it's happening, the people, they just kind of flounder. And they do their own thing. And you don't even realize it, but it makes everyone suffer. No vision, then
No discipline.
no discipline. Well, everything else goes away
Yeah, I mean,
because there's no, the vision is what it is, and it's where everybody's going, and the team, in order to keep going that direction, has to know where we're going. And if you don't, all this other stuff just kind of falls to the side.
I think vision is more long term too. So it's not just like a day by day thing. So you're not just like, all right, today I know that I'm going to go Christmas shopping later. Like it's not. It's the bigger scope. It's the bigger picture of what direction you're going.
Well, let's talk about this studio. All right. We're in my dining room right now.
Right.
But you both know this isn't the end
Come
of
on.
this vision.
Right.
Okay.
This is just one small step in what I want all this to be.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That's a great.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Where we want to take this podcast. We and you'll notice we'll text each other and stuff along the way to continue to keep that in front of us because, we're going to get tired. 4 or 5 more weeks of this, you're going to be like, oh, what am I doing? We're going to do the podcast. Well, we got to continue to stoke the flame
Absolutely.
and talk about where we're going. And D. Brown's going to have him a brick and mortar place where we can go and sit and be set up for this. That's going to be good.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's happening.
I love it. Number 11 is integrity. The leader has to have integrity. We talked about that. The leader must do the right thing when no one's looking.
Mm-hmm.
Always. And if he doesn't, then leadership capital goes away, right? and it like we talked about, it's a whole lot easier to get in a bad spot than it is to get out of it. This is one of those times where if you mess this up, it takes years to overcome. The leader will not overcome an integrity break very quickly. And I put character with it. Number 12 is character. The leader must have character. He must be trustworthy and be good to keep their word. How important is it that you keep your word? And, you know, I'm sure you were taught that as a child. Keep your word, keep your word, keep your word.
Mm-hmm.
But it is really important for a leader. It never break the word. In this life, about the only thing you can protect that no one can ever take from you is your name and your word.
That's right.
And so guard that with everything that you have, period.
That's good.
Number 13 is resolve. The leader must decide firmly on a course of action. Without resolve, the leader can, I'll say, kind of sway, right? So when you say resolve, I mean, you have to be able to set things in motion and then have the courage and the resolve to hold it, okay? Even when the waves get high, even when the times get tough, even when it gets hard. You got to be able to plant your feet as a leader. Plant your feet. Now, on the other hand, there's times where you've planted your feet and you may find out that you've made a mistake. At which point, you need to have the resolve to pull it back and say, all right, I've made a mistake. And look, there's no one in the world that does this better than a leader that I know. And hopefully someday he'll come on here. I'm not going to name his name right now. There's this guy, and I'll talk to him later, but when he screws it up, he'll tell you. And it's noticeable. And it's not, I don't think it's genuine. You would think, man, this guy, he does this every time. But it's genuine. He truly will beat on himself. And he'll tell you, it's hard for anybody to beat on you when you beat on yourself. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I'm not going to throw his name out just yet because I'm going to talk to him first.
Yeah.
But if he'll join us, he's a strong leader. And he will tell you real quick, man, I screwed up. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry. And that really helps me because I think, man, a reminder for me, I don't do that enough. So, number 14 is be prudent. What does prudent mean? Anybody?
I don't know. I don't have Google.
All right, so it's good, careful judgment with the future in mind. Okay? Now, good, careful judgment with the future in mind. Maddie, can you think of a time where you exhibited good judgment with the future in mind?
That's such a broad question.
So let's look like this. Sometimes a decision can be made quickly, and sometimes you've got to really think about it, right? Mm-hmm. And what the consequences are of the future. So if you're presented a scenario and you say, again, you can make a decision or you can make a decision with the future in mind. Typically, the leader is faced with decisions all the time, okay? And the leader does act quickly, makes decisive decisions, but again, the strongest leader with the most influence is thinking about the future, mm-hmm. and that's prudent. Being prudent is thinking about the decision that you have with the future in mind, with the consequences in mind, with all the bad things or all the good things that could come of that decision.
I've done many pro-cons lists.
There you go.
I mean, that's kind of what comes to my head. I can't think of something like... Well,
that's prudent, right?
Right. So and most of them on the pro-con list are, immediate pros and cons. But then once you start digging down into the pro-con list, it does definitely get more for future. So I've definitely done it. I just can't think of.
Well, that's what being prudent is. So,
Right.
in the opposite of that would just be to make this flippantly make decisions without any concern with what the future, how it affects the future.
Right.
And so, again, the leader is always looking ahead and making decisions based on what's coming down the pipe.
Right.
And so, that's important.
I always have thinking about that. At what point is a question or where you have to decide something reactionary, where you're like, okay, yes, do that. I mean, I guess in my head, I'm like, I make so many decisions every day that I'm just like, yeah, or no, let's not do that, or whatever. And I think deep down, I'm being intentional on how I'm answering the question or doing the actions or whatever, but I don't. It's like, at what point do you sit there and really sit and think how this is going to affect the future?
Right. Well, that's important. You got to think about the future and how it affects your team. So, number 15 is be temperate. Now, people are going, what does that word mean? Well, it's self-control, right? So, temperate could be said to be, I think Google says self-restraint. Either way, the great leader must be able to control thyself and emotion. This one I struggle with. If I'm honest, well, between this one and humility and probably all of them I struggle with, but this one is high on the list. I'm a very emotional guy, and when I'm not in the right place in my heart, I can just unload. And that hurts a leader, okay? Big time. Because the leader's supposed to be in control no matter what. And they always say the test of a leader is when things aren't going good, what place are they in? Well, yes, that's 100% right. Because when everything's going crazy and it's haywire and people are whatever, you want to be the guy or the girl that I'm the leader, this is good, we're going to roll with the punches. They talk about that, I think, in Extreme Ownership. But being able to control your emotion is very important in your influence.
I think we kind of talked about people's personalities, and a lot of the leaders that we brought up that were in our personal lives is like everyone was just the same. It didn't matter if, crap was hitting the fan or whatever. It's the same emotional, like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to do this. Whether it's calm, whether it's energetic or whatever, but they were always the same. I think that was maybe one of the first episodes that we did, but I think that's a great one.
It's a big deal.
It makes me think of, we used to say, organized chaos. And just no matter how wild, crazy things, hey, keep it here.
Yeah.
Keep it level.
Yeah, you want to keep it. You want to keep it level. And again, this is my struggle. I'm on the struggle bus because when things get sideways, I tend to get elevated. Like I get angry, right? I get mad. I'm like, this ain't working. We need leadership. We need this. We need that. We need this. We need that. And look, I'm on the struggle bus. It's so difficult because when you're really passionate, you really care, you really want everybody around you healthy. And when it's not, you tend, at least me, I tend to get emotional. And that's a bad play. You got to control it.
Yeah.
And so I've worked for years to do that, and I've never really mastered it. I don't know that I ever will, but I'm going to keep trying. Number 16 is be meek. Oh, I love that word. I don't know why, but ever since I read that in the Bible, it's a good word. So many people might say the leader doesn't need to be meek because that's weak. And my old buddy pal Jordan Peterson has a really cool teaching on that. I heard it from him, in fact, so he gets the credit. But meekness is not weakness. To be meek is quiet and gentle. Some people might say, and who wants to be that? You don't want your leader to be quiet and gentle. But there is times when the leader needs to be quiet and gentle. There's also times when the leader needs to be angry. Okay? I believe that there's times when the leader needs to show his passion and show his anger at different times, right? So if all your people are being taken advantage of and you're just sitting over there being meek, what are they thinking? Okay? In my opinion, I want to follow the guy that has the courage, that has the care, has the inside of him. I want to see a heartbeat. I want to see him get a little worked up every now and then, right? Now, he needs to be in control. He needs to exhibit self-control, but he needs to get worked up every now and then, or what's inside of him, you know? And so Jordan Peterson said, being meek is like having a sword and knowing how to use it, but keeping it sheathed. And that's what Jordan Peterson says. And that to me, it's like, man, that's awesome. Because, again, he knows how to use, been trained to use the sword. He can kill people, take people's head off, whatever. But he keeps it in the sheath and tries to work it out diplomatically. That's meek. And to me, that's a very strong one that we ought to look for.
I think it, like, one of the ones that we talked about too was like your enthusiasm. It rubs off on whoever you're around or whatever. So being meek, gentle, and quiet. Is that what you said? Gentle and
quiet.
Yeah. It's just like if you approach a situation where someone's upset or emotional or angry or whatever, if you come in with meekness, I feel like they'll end up mirroring each other.
That's good. Mirroring's good. Yeah, that's good. 17 is honest. Obviously, we all got to be honest. Honesty builds trust. Trust builds leadership. One must always be honest no matter what the consequences are. Even little white lies are off the table. You cannot lie ever, ever, ever. In order to grow in leadership, you must be trusted and you must be open and never conceal information or hide things if asked upon, right? So, number 18, the ability to delegate. This is necessary too. Y'all see me reading the Bible earlier. I was trying to get caught up on that story, but in Exodus, Moses was a strong leader, right? Delivered the people. But in Exodus, and you may not know this, but in Exodus, Moses was told that he needed to delegate. And so you can go back and read it later. We're not going to read it now, but I think it's in chapter 18 where Moses' father-in-law told him, hey, look, dude, there ain't enough of you to go around for all these people. You're going to have to delegate. And that's all throughout Scripture, by the way, which is where a lot of leadership principles come from, especially in my list. But you got to go do this different because there's not enough of you to go around. And so your ability to delegate directly impacts your leadership. You have to delegate. And like you talked about it, Daniel, with your guys.
Yeah.
Go do this, go do that, make it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. You got to do it. Anything on that?
That's hard for me.
I mean, it's something I'm definitely working on, and I want to, because
no one can do it better than me.
Right?
And I really had to get over that my way is the right way, and
it's
that's
hard.
interesting you said that.
Because I mean, again, especially in creative, we could, and let's talk about video. I could take 10 minutes of footage and turn it into a video, and then I could hand it to each of you guys, and you could turn it into video. And it's art. It'll be different. They're all going to be different. There'll be 3 different videos, completely different. So, and I got to the point where I was just spread too thin, and I was like, I have to delegate, or this is my ceiling. And it's like,
Correct.
Is this where I want to be, or are we ready to start investing and delegating?
Right. That's good. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Number 19 is being consistent. The great leader must be consistent in all his moves. Inconsistency leads to distrust. Every time. You have to be consistent. I had a guy that worked for me years ago. He told, I don't remember who he was telling, but anyway, I'm not going to, he had talked, they were talking about how they were talking about me, and the guy said in front of a bunch of people, Jeremy's very consistent. And I thought, where did that dude, what is it? And I had no idea. I still to this day don't know what he said, but he said it, and I thought, man, that's good. I need to be consistent, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was just a conversation we were having. But to me, consistency is very important. Again, leads to trust.
Mm-hmm.
Number 20 is resiliency. Last but not least, he must be resilient. The great leader must be able to get knocked down and get back up. Take a punch, right? They must be able to fail and re-energize, learn lessons, and come back stronger. Again, failure is important, and you will do it as a leader, and you must be resilient, because if not, you're going to get tired, because you're going to lose. You're going to fail over and over and over again, and being able to come back stronger. It's important. So there's 20 of these. All are values or traits or attributes or whatever you want to call them. We're going to call them mandates. Mandates.
I like it.
And all of these are founded on two things, in my opinion: trust and presence. Trust and presence. That is what the leader ought to strive for. You focus on these attributes, and you will be present and trustworthy, and then being present and trustworthy will build your influence. So, what might you say is the most important attribute? It's hard to even say.
I don't know. I can tell you the hardest one for me is humility.
Yeah.
I don't know what the most important one is. I mean,
I feel like ownership. You went first with ownership, and it kind of encompasses everything. It kind of like touches on, like, it includes all of that, because if you can't own it, there's nothing.
That's good. So what about our guest? Let's ask the guest. Maybe, like, we're asking our guests, what do you think is the most important attribute to what all the 20 that we covered? Tell us what you think's the number one important one, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's let them on our Facebook page, maybe on the post,
Yep.
can just comment what's the most important. That'd be cool.
Yes, sir.
yeah,
Yeah.
We'll put it
And
together.
then, we'll put that together.
very cool.
So, all right. Anything else?
I have a key takeaway that I want to share with you guys.
Good.
And this was all beautiful and wonderful and a lot to think about this week. But you said a couple times, you used the word leadership capital. And it really stuck with me. And I've been sitting here thinking about leadership capital, and that's what I want to get. Some more leadership capital. And then it's like, okay, all right, I understand, like, capital, and I'm going to go get money.
Currency.
I want to go get leadership currency.
That's right.
And what do I need to do that?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to think about.
Yep. Yeah, currency, that's what it is, essentially. Leadership capital, leadership currency. You do, you get.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think of my kids, like, at school, and, like, getting, like, little clips and rewards, and, like,
Yeah.
I want us to set up our little
Gold star.
Oh, man.
Maybe we could set up a little system so we can give each other some
Yeah.
leadership capital.
Yeah, that's good.
That's
How
great.
much you got in the bank? So, excellent.
So good stuff, Jeremy. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Maddie.
Yeah,
All right. We signing out.
I guess so.
Thank y'all.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Signing off.
Great job. 1 hour.
Yeah, I felt that